Hey guys, I'm just here with Adam. Well, this evening for him, this morning for me, as we sort of chat through his journey over the last October, November, December, January, February, March. So sort of 5, 6 months. So thanks for popping on, Adam. Appreciate that. It's awesome. Yeah, mate. Do you just want to give us a little bit of background on kind of obviously what led to to your mammoth effort there on, what was it, January 21st?
Yeah, about that. Yeah, 21,
Yeah.
22. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Do you want to give us a little bit of background, Adam, on yourself and kind of what you, sort of where you're from, what you've done previously as well?
Yeah, well, pretty sort of typical New Zealander. Played a bit of rugby and bits and pieces back in the day and the glory days, and yeah, you sort of had a wife and a few kids come along, and you retire from rugby, and everything else sort of falls away, and you put on a few kilos, and your life gets a little bit too easy, I suppose, and then yeah, we're sheep and beef farmers just out of Dannyburg, and sort of always enjoyed shearing, but I've never done a lot of it. I've always been a shepherd and a manager. So they used to say you're either a good shepherd or a good shearer, because shepherds only shear the sheep that they've left behind when they were supposed to be mustering for the shearers. So I can't be much of a shepherd either. But yeah, really, that's all I did was a few stragglers and the rams, and but always enjoyed the challenge of it. And then yeah, with the cost of shearing going up in New Zealand, me and a few mates decided to sort of do a few of our own, and we had bloody good time. We were sort of just doing 3 runs and then have a few beers afterwards. But we're pretty competitive buggers, and it sort of got a bit more serious. And as our gear got a little bit more better, we sort of yeah, really started to crank into it, and we're going all right. And then yeah, one day we got a phone call from a guy, Dan Billing, who's a local bank manager around here, and he's the same. He loved the shearing and had done a bit, and threw this crazy idea out there to do this 24-hour thing, which I must say, probably originally I thought, oh, probably not. And I know my wife said definitely not, but yeah, he gave me the week to decide, and it was just a great opportunity to do something like that. I'd probably I had probably a few years earlier had started trying to get fit again, and I'd started doing a bit of trail running, and I'd done a marathon and a few things just to try and get back in the game, and was really enjoying that. So when he said, I knew I had a bit of background. I'd done a bit of shearing and I'd done a few endurance things, so I thought, oh, it's not real fresh, but we should be okay here. And when I said yes, that's sort of when the fun began, and I got uh, yeah, well, that's why I actually spoke to Brad Anderson, who had done one before, and he said he'd worked with you previously. So he said first thing I'd do is give Matt a ring, and that's sort of when the serious stuff started. So yeah, that's probably the bit of the background how it led up to the event anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, because so we started working together in the October, didn't we? So we had sort of October, November, December, and January to sort of bring up speed. Obviously, with your sort of previous background of exercise, obviously I appreciate it was possibly a little bit different to the way you trained previously. But obviously that would have helped. That definitely helped with you getting into the program anyway. What was it sort of like? Obviously, you know yourself better than anyone else. Like, what was it? Did you have any particular fears or anything like that going into it, Adam, at all? Did you have it, or were you fairly confident that you'd follow the process and away you go?
Yeah, I think I talked about that earlier on with you. I said, "Oh, look, I'm sticking with the program pretty good, and I'm the diet and everything. I'm pushing pretty hard." And I think you asked what was your motivation, and I said the fear of failure is definitely my motivation. And you said, we can use that for us. So yeah, that was it. I knew it was after doing some endurance things, I knew that it only gets harder. If you think you're going pretty good at halfway, you're not even close. So that was my big concern, was going out like a hero and then getting to that final day or the final few runs of the event and just hitting the wall. And once your body gives up, it's very difficult to get through that wall, no matter how mentally tough you are. And I sort of knew that with the endurance running I'd done, going out a bit hard at times, and when you hit the wall, it's very hard to push through. So just wanted to get do it as best we could. Like, followed the nutrition really tightly, and did something every day. And yeah, just everything we did was sort of a step towards achieving that goal of making sure that we did our best and was still alive at the end, because there are a few concerns from the public and family about that as well, about surviving it. So
Okay.
yeah, we
Yeah.
certainly did that in the end.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, just so maybe I should have explained at the start, but do you want to just sort of, for those people who are tuning in on this and watching, do you want to just tell them kind of what the day entailed, as in, like, you know, how many runs, how long, you know, from start to finish? Because obviously I've not actually mentioned that yet.
Ah, yeah, right. Yeah, no, sorry. So yeah, it was we started at 7 o'clock on Friday or Saturday morning, and we saw 12 runs with 2 hours, right through to sort of 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon. And it pretty much followed a normal shearing day of half an hour for smoko, hour for lunch, half an hour for afternoon tea, and then there was an hour break in between the days. So
Yeah.
pretty much went half hour, hour, half hour, hour right through. And then yeah, finished sort of mid afternoon on Sunday, and that was the 12 runs. So yeah,
Yeah.
right through the night. Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
And one of the things that I think would be really interesting to know is how did you feel that? What did you eat? What did you drink?
Yeah, I had big plans. My wife, who was looking after me on the day, had made all sorts of stuff, but on the day, not as much as I thought. I'd eaten really well and I felt really good, and I'd had lots of sleep. So I took all those boxes before the event. And so when I went to start the handpiece for the first run, I knew I had all that in the bank, which was a really good feeling, made me feel quite confident. And then, yeah, as we started, I was the sort of stuff I'd been using in training. So the bliss balls, and I had some a bit of protein, eggs and stuff, kurma mash and bits and pieces. But as the event went on, I was drinking so much fluid, I sort of really wanted dry stuff. So I ended up eating quite a lot of crackers, and bananas. And after the first day, I was eating bananas and crackers and some bliss balls, and it worked. And I didn't feel sick. It wasn't upsetting my stomach. So I said to them, right, well, let's just stick with that just from now on.
Yeah.
I'll just have that every meal. And I was using the gels as well. So the gels, the pure gels, I was using them on the hour and when I finished after the run. So
Yeah.
I knew I was getting enough sort of carb through that as well. So yeah, that helped the confidence.
Okay, cool. Because I know there'll probably be some people who watch this who, you know, who are probably thinking of maybe doing things like similar, so like the longer just shearathons and 24 hours, etc. So this is always useful to hear because, I mean, a bit like you, having done lots of endurance events, you know, you can have a good plan, but you need to have a plan B as well. And actually, sometimes the plan sort of unfolds in front of you. And so long as you've got a good handle on knowing what you need per hour, you can kind of top that up a little bit and take on board whatever feels good at that point in time. So yeah, good mate, cool. Obviously, you alluded to something there, which I think is really important, which is that kind of felt confident because you prepared well. Would you say that's something? Would you say that's something that um, you know, physically felt as well? Because obviously, sleep, nutrition, all part of that, and then the training side of things. You know, talk to me about that.
Yes, we've had a really the training started early and it was great, but I run 1,100 hectares here, so we're quite busy. So definitely not full-time shearers by any stretch. And so that's what I really enjoyed about the training was I could do it all after work at home, and I created a little dungeon in the garage with a few dumbbells and bits and pieces that you'd put forward to use. And so yeah, it was really simple to use. And I knew that coming into the new year, I was keen to do quite a lot of shearing. So the January leading up to it, we're like, right, we're gonna do a heap of shearing. A lot of the farm work was tidied up. But it's literally been the wettest January, February in living memory in this area. And so we could not get any dry sheet. We were trying to travel all around the country to get them, and just couldn't really. So I didn't have as much shearing under the belt as like, probably a couple of half days, and then towards the end I was just ripping in sort of 50 odd lambs and put on the cover for a day and a half just to dry them and then shear them, but it wasn't many. So um, physically I felt great, but I was nervous with the lack of shearing that I'd done. So I certainly ramped up some of the workouts that we'd done and just started stacking them on top of each other for one session. But
Yeah.
that's the flexibility exercises that we did. Like I felt great. So yeah, I did physically. I felt really good and flexible and strong. But I was still nervous about the lack of shearing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think it's only right. I think it's like, it's like when you're going for an exam or something, isn't it? You've revised, but actually like doing the exam or doing the kind of like the actual work is always useful, mentally more than anything, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the day itself, Adam, obviously you've alluded to sort of like the nutrition side of things, when you started, when you finished. Obviously there are other people sharing with you as well, weren't there? So do you just want to like maybe just give the event a little bit of an overview as much as you can? Appreciate me and you talking.
Yeah. No, well, there was four of us that did the whole time, and then we had a fifth stand that had a few ringers come on and peel a few out. So yeah, the four of us was pretty much the same boat. Some of the guys had done a little bit more sharing than others, but all sort of farmers, and apart from the guy that organised it, Dan, who's a bank manager and has a farm. So yeah, we're just a bunch of lads that got on pretty well. So we did this, and then it sort of grew and grew. But yeah, it was pretty cool having those guys beside us and knowing that yeah, we weren't going to give up and yeah, just keep pushing it pretty hard. Yeah, we were all pretty surprised by the tallies we did because yeah, like I think I would have done 5 full days in my whole shearing career, and the other guys had done a few more but hadn't done any the tallies. And then one of the guys was they're all good shearers, but didn't have the experience, so we didn't really know. The really hard thing was pacing ourselves. So well, when we start, what pace do we start at to guarantee that we're going to finish? And of course, the crowd and the excitement, we sort of took off a little bit faster than we planned. But we all felt good, and we just sort of rode that wave. And then when it got tough, that was sort of when you had to roll your sleeves up and rely on your training and see how tough we were, I suppose. So yeah, that was a big challenge at the start, was controlling your emotions and obviously a big crowd there too. So we were trying to make sure we were doing it nice and clean and didn't open ourselves up for any criticism. And yeah, I think we did a pretty good job with that. So yeah,
that's good, mate. It's good. And all of this being done for a great cause, right?
Yeah, it was. So it was 3 charities: the New Zealand Breast Cancer Society, and then the other 2 charities is a New Zealand Rural Support Trust and a Here for You, which is a mental health charity for farmers on the East Coast. And that was, I mean, at the time that was really cool, and I've had a lot of support since, and people telling me how important that is. But what's happened over here we've had a cyclone hit the east coast of the North Island and created a lot of damage to farms and stock losses and a few human losses as well. So those charities have benefited a lot from the event. And actually had the Here for You, which is for all farmers to ring up. It's a hotline to ring up and say, look, we're struggling and we just want to talk to someone. And we received a great email a couple of weeks after the event from the people that organised that charity, saying that they'd had a 40% increase in the biggest from their biggest week after the shearing. Just people ringing up saying, look, we saw the shearing and we didn't realise this was here and available, and we just want to ring up and talk with someone and have a chat and talk some stuff through. So that was, and then with the money we were able to give them, they were able to put more people on the telephone at the other end to answer those calls. So yeah, when you hear stuff like that, it makes it all worthwhile. It became a lot more than just 4 guys whacking off a bit of wall anyway. It was a really cool event in the end.
And I guess the thing with everything else that you can almost quantify, like they know how many percentage they've had of increase, but what you can't necessarily quantify is how many lives that will save, because you've got people ringing up, that call could save their life, couldn't it? So and then you flip that back to where you were, and obviously you taking part, one of the least selfish things you can do, isn't it? Just to spend 24 hours of your life, and you might save a few lives. So yeah, good on you. Pretty brilliant.
Yeah, no, it was. yeah, like I say, not something sort of thought about at the time, but yeah, really awesome to hear that afterwards. That has helped people. So yeah, brilliant.
Just to sort of like talk numbers again because it's always quite interesting. So, first run, last run, what was the numbers? How did you go?
Yeah, well, in the end, we sort of broke the whole event down. The guys in my pen would say, let's just work on quarter of an hour. Just we'll go quarter of an hour, and then before you know it, quarter of an hour to half an hour, and then before you know it, you're at the hour, and then before you know it, the run's over, and you start again. So we really sort of broke it down to quarter of an hours. And yeah, at the start was just trying to fill your comb and watch, limit your blows and just try and do a nice, clean, tidy job. So I think at the start it was just below 100, sort of 97s, 98s for the first couple of runs, and then but sharing within myself and trying not to let the crowd get ahead of me. We actually, because it was only a charity event, we actually had all different lines of sheep coming through as well. So I knew the second and third run were going to be quite big terminal black-faced lambs. So I was saving a bit in the tank for them because they're pretty known to beat you up. So I said the first run I'll just sort of cruise and get my iron and then get through these terminal lambs, and then might be able to get into a real pattern then, and sort of did. So I'd mentioned to a few people I sort of would. My plan was to try and not drop too many each run. So I thought, yeah, I wasn't sure I'd go up, but I definitely didn't want to drop too many. But as it went, I working in these quarters, I said, well, we got to about the second one, so let's just see if we can do one more than the last every run. And as I sort of went on the event, it was getting better and better and feeling better, and my gear, I had some really good guys helping my gear,
Right.
and they were great. Yeah, and then I got to the last day, and I thought, right, well, I always said to myself, the event starts with that last four runs. Like, I need to get to there in as good a shape as I can, and then we can sort of just go berserk. And that's sort of what happened, really. The sheep really went off about 5 o'clock. It was just that's the coldest part, and they'd been off the feed for a while, and so we all dropped our tally a bit then, and it wasn't so much because we were tired and it was the hardest time mentally. It was more the sheep had gone right off. And once the sun came up, they warmed up a bit more, and yeah, sort of just went berserk. And that half an hour break was we had obviously physios and that which were fantastic and really helped, and the crowd was building, and yeah, I sort of thought, right, well, now it's time to go. I'm feeling good. I've done the work. Let's have some fun. So yeah, that's pretty much what happened. And I was talking to a couple of guys at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and they were saying, geez, we don't know. And I said, oh, let's just go, we'll all go together, just keep marching in there. And it's certainly become a bit like that at the end. Once one of us went, we all just stuck with them and just keep going. So we all really did all sort of finish. You throw a blanket over us really on that last day because we were all just going at it together. So incredible feeling. It was almost because of the sleep deprivation and everything else, I suppose it's hard to remember. It's only when I look back at videos because you're in such a zone of shearing. People asked me if the music helped, but I didn't hear the music on the last day. It was, you blocked it out, and people said, "Did your back hurt?" I couldn't tell you. I blocked it out. It was really all about just getting the next sheep and getting the wool off it. So quite an incredible space to be in mentally. And then yeah, at the end they basically said. I couldn't. People talk to me. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but they pretty much had to put their hand up and say, "You can stop now. That's it. It's finished." So, yeah, that was pretty cool. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
nice,
yeah.
mate. So, yeah. So at the end, what was the last run tally? Do you know?
I think I did 118 in the last run. Yeah,
That's right.
so we sort of went up 20. Yeah, yeah. I'd like to think they were as clean as the first one, but yeah, we were just going cutting loose. Really, we had our fun. We're just having a bit of fun with it, and yeah,
Yeah,
going.
it's
So
a
it
hell
was
of an
great.
effort. The 12 2-hour run to put that number up. Brilliant, mate. Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I did want to finish strong, but like I say, mentally, I was different zone anyway. But yeah, pretty cool place to be, and that's when I think all of that hard work for the months leading up, that's where it really paid off too. Was that last day where I still felt good enough to keep going. So yeah, it
Yeah,
was awesome.
great. Um, Yeah, I mean, is there anything? I mean, I think the only thing we haven't mentioned is kind of the total amount of money you raised. Do you know how much you raised or not?
It was about 130,000 New Zealand dollars, obviously. So pretty cool because that was pretty much so we're from Dannyburg, and a lot of that money was local money and small businesses and families just putting their hands in their pockets. So yeah, we didn't have any huge corporate sponsorship. It was just a real town getting together, and that's why it was such a buzz. And people were smothering in the woolshed trying to get a view of that last couple of runs, and kids everywhere, and yeah, just a real awesome event to be part of, really. And
Yeah,
yeah,
brilliant.
to raise that money was a real bonus and a credit to the town too, really. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, nice. Yeah, anything else you want to add, Adam? Anything you think I've not asked that I should have, or yeah,
No, I think we mentioned earlier about after the event and
yeah,
yeah, where to from there. But yeah, we like so sort of rode the wave for a while, and I must say my recovery wasn't quite as professional as it perhaps could have been. It was probably a bit more of an old school recovery, but yeah, we I had a few beers and celebrated, and had a few fatty chops and a bit of ice cream, which had been off the list for a few months. So yeah, it started putting the weight gain went up a bit, so it was good because all of us had lost a lot of weight. Like we'd taken it pretty seriously, and so yeah, I think like I think I lost about 14 kilos from the time I spoke to you to the event, and a couple of the other guys were the same, and so yeah, we'd taken it pretty seriously, and then afterwards it was like, wow, now what? So you've had a couple of months to sort of figure out what to do, and yeah, I've got a few things on the horizon, probably nothing as serious as that, but yeah, certainly give you any perspective on life of what you can achieve when you put your mind to it. So yeah, don't sort of want to drift through the next 10 or so years and get to 50 and be like, oh man, yeah, pretty keen to keep pushing it. So yeah,
yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Well, the thing is, well, you've got the benefit of having been fit and strong, and with your rugby career before, but like now you've seen like the kind of rewards again, I suppose, of looking after yourself and a little closer eye on your nutrition and the lead up to things and your lifestyle and your training, all that kind of stuff, and then you reap the reward and you get into that mental place on the day where you've just kind of, well, some people would kind of call it flow, really, where you're just there and you're doing it and it's still getting better, and you get the stress and this and the skill levels meet in the middle, and away you go, and now obviously afterwards it's a very common thing. People achieve massive things and then they're like, what next? Because your focus has been so dialed into that particular date or event, and then it's okay to relax afterwards and enjoy, but then there seems to be a very common pattern where trying to find that something else that lights a similar sort of fire. And I think the thing is what you've alluded to it a couple of times, obviously it's just such a wider reaching result of what you've done, in terms of the impact it's going to have on other people's families as well. It's almost hard to comprehend how you could do something, you personally as an individual could do something that's going to make such a difference to other people. And I think those things kind of evolve, don't they? Like that phone call from your friend who's a bank manager, who knows when someone like that's going to ring you up again and say, hey Adam, do you fancy doing X for for Y? And yeah, and then you end up training, so it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that yeah, while you're out there doing it, then yeah, these things do sort of those doors open up around you. So yeah, it's about being out there and being active and getting it done, I suppose. So
Yeah,
yeah, no,
I
that's
mean,
cool.
I sort of think of like the similar scenario for you is like when my friend rang me up last May and he was like, "Oh Matt, do you fancy climbing Mira Peak? One of the mountains in the Himalayas, and doing the highest exercise class at altitude, Guinness World Record." And I was like, "Wow, that sounds amazing." And he was like, "Yeah, we could do it for charity, and blah blah blah." And then suddenly, you know, all of the years of training that I've done before have helped me, and like you,
Mm.
helped you to have that foundation to be able to say yes and go, yeah, all right, I'll look at, I'll sort of try and figure out a way of being in the best shape possible to do that. And then, and then I didn't raise as much money as you did, but for motor neurone disease, so it's a it's something a bit greater than you as the individual, isn't it? I think it's a good way of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, the event became much bigger than us, and same with you guys. It's not just about standing on a mountain. It's about helping out a cause, and yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
Brilliant, mate. Cool. Well, I think we've given everybody a little insight into what you did, Adam. But yeah, really appreciate your time, and thank you very much for sharing that with us. And I'm sure there will be lots of people watching this who've got ideas for themselves, so as to what they want to do, or maybe it will inspire them to do something. So anything you close up with in terms of if there's anyone sat there watching this thinking, do you know what, I might have a go at doing whatever it may be.
Yeah, just do it. Yeah, like I hummed and hard for a while and thought of all the things that could go wrong and probably would go wrong. But if you commit to it and give it everything, yeah, you'll be fine. It's there's so much information out there and so many people willing to help that yeah, anything's possible no matter how fat and old and grey you are. So, I'm proof of that.
Oh, mate, you're all good. Yeah, well, listen, awesome stuff, mate. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate
Thanks for everything, mate. It's been great. Cheers.
it.